Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to you today. So let me share my screen first of all. Let me just do that to my presentation, and we'll get started there. So what I want to talk to you today about is creating accessible PDF files. You see, I work with Adobe with education customers in the UK, so I'm always happy to help any of you who want to reach out to me. I've got a very small amount of time to cover a lot of topics, so I'm going to quickly look at why create accessible PDF files, how to do it, how to check they're accessible, what to do if you've already got a document you want to make it accessible, and some other features such as liquid mode that we have as well just now. So first of all, why create an accessible PDF? Well, basically the most important reason is to ensure that all of your students can access all the materials that they need for their course, about the university, and anything else. That's the number one reason. There are also regulations as well. So the 2018 accessibility regulations to make online public services, publicly funded services accessible. And under those regulations, that's any PDF on your website created after 2018 must be accessible. And if you've got a PDF on your website that users need to access services, then they have to be accessible regardless of when they are created. But the number one reason is it's the right thing to do for your students and staff. So what are the things that make a PDF accessible? So really it's about structure. So it's the structure that underlines underlies the PDF, which makes it accessible. So in other words, it's very much like if you're familiar with languages like HTML, where it says this is the title, this is a paragraph, and so on. It's very similar to that. So it does have this, and it is an XML-based structure that lies underneath it. So it'll say what a title is, what's a heading, what's a paragraph, what's a list, and so on. There are other important elements to that as well: the reading order of a PDF, the language, your alt text for your images and charts and so on, tagging your tables correctly, links, and so on. So there's a number of different things that go towards making a PDF accessible. And all of these means that, for example, a screen reader that a visually impaired person might be using, such as JAWS screen reader, and there's several others, and that means that can interpret that data and it can read it out in a way that makes sense and is useful to that user. So how would you create an accessible PDF file? So let me just switch over quickly to Word here. So this is Word. I've got my sample lorem ipsum document in here. So if I wanted to make an accessible PDF file from Word, how would I go about that? So I have Acrobat installed, which has given me the Acrobat PDF Maker. Now there are lots of tools that will make accessible PDFs. There are lots and lots of PDF tools out there. Some of them will make accessible PDFs, and some of them will not do that. So I'm obviously going to focus on Acrobat as a solution today. Looking at the Acrobat PDF Maker information here, if I look at the preferences, the default preference is to enable accessibility and reflow with tagged PDF. So you don't need to change the defaults. There's a setting in there, enable advanced tagging. Probably counterintuitively, I'd recommend you don't use that because it can add layers of complexity, which can sometimes make things more difficult than easy. And once I've done that, I'll just simply click on Create PDF. It's going to save my file here. I'll just give it a nice name. And I'll start to create that file. And that's my file has now been created. So I've got my PDF has been created. Looking at that PDF, how can I find out if it's accessible? Well, the first thing to do is to look at the document properties. So you can look at File and Document Properties, or Control and D, and that's going to bring up the metadata for this file. And I can see, is it a tagged PDF? Then yes. So that is, it's not full accessibility, but that is a very good start to it. We can look at the tags. This is the tag tool over here. I can just open that up, and you can see in there how I can see what's a header, what's a paragraph, what is a list, and so on. So it's tagged that PDF in there. Now I can, if I am not happy with that, I can make manual changes to it as well. So there's my header. What if I decide that I don't want that to be a header 2 and it's a header 1? I can just edit that, and you'll now see it treats that as a header 1 instead. Now we also have tools in here which we can use in terms of maybe adding tags into a document that didn't already have tags, for example. So you can auto tag the document here. You can run an accessibility check, and that's going to tell you if there are any issues with accessibility in your document. You can output a report from that as well. Set your alt text, set your reading order. So you know, you've got all the tools in there if you do need to make those manual changes in there. But I would say a couple of other things about creating accessible PDF files. So if you are going from a paper-based document to a digital document and you're scanning it, then there's processes that you need to make sure you're undergoing. So you need to have recognized the text in that document. So that means you undergo what we call optical character recognition, which recognizes the text. Now, another one of the accessibility tools in Acrobat is the accessibility kind of action set, which will actually do that for you. So you basically run multiple actions on a document at the press of a button. It'll do the OCR, it'll add the tags, and it'll do an accessibility check on it as well. One of the key things I would say about this is that a high quality source means a high quality PDF. So if you have, for example, an application like Word or FrameMaker or something like that is going to produce structured content, then you will have that structured content in your PDF. So the better quality the source is, the better quality the output is going to be. Yep, so just to some of the things on checking accessibility, you can check the document properties, you can look at the tag tree as I showed you there, and you can use those accessibility checker tools as well. Now, what do you do if you've already got a document that somebody else has given you, or you have on your website, or you've had in your department for a few years, and so you have a need to make that accessible? So again, there are tools there in Acrobat that will do that. So you can auto tag that document. You can run an accessibility check, run that action wizard, the make accessibility action wizard. If you need to, you can manually add tags, you can add your alt text, your reading order, and so on. Now, another interesting thing is a tool that Adobe are working on now, which is to do this at scale, so kind of in bulk, if you like, which is the PDF Accessibility API. So that's something we're actually currently beta testing. And that is an API which you could run on a large number of documents. It uses artificial intelligence to do that process. Quick word about liquid mode and reflow. So if you're working on web and mobile, so Android, iOS, Chromebooks, etc., that can be an issue when you've got multi-column documents. So there is a setting within the reader for the Adobe Reader for mobile, which is called liquid mode. And liquid mode, what it basically does is it tags that PDF on the fly and it reflows the layout so that it fits in the page in a very readable way, and it also is adding those tags in there. So it's just a bit like a kind of liquid HTML where it will reflow that page to fit a mobile device. And on the PDF Accessibility API, so a little bit more detail on that. So that will make archives of PDF files accessible at scale, because you might be in a position where, okay, you can adopt best practice going forward, or maybe you've been doing that for a few years, but what about those 25 years worth of PDF files that you already have? And it's a daunting task to convert those 20,000 PDF files and make them accessible one at a time. So the Accessibility API allows you to do that at scale. If you are interested in participating in the beta for that, please let me know. On your side, you would need to have a Java developer available, and you'd need to have an enterprise console, because that's how that tool is delivered. And just finally, some resources on accessibility. So we've got a really good video series, and that goes into some depth into how to make sure all of your documents are accessible. There's actually 6 different videos which are up to an hour long, so it really is a deep dive into PDF accessibility, but it is excellent, I should say. So if this is, you're a subject specialist for this area, for example, I think you're definitely worth checking those out. We have our online documentation, of course, which explains how to produce an accessible PDF file. We also have an accessibility feedback link there, so institutions can, give feedback on different accessibility topics that they're encountering with any Adobe tools that they're using. And that was end of the presentation. So I'll switch back to see if there are some questions.
Thank you so much, Alister. There have been plenty of questions.
Okay.
If anyone would like to ask their question, if you raise your hand, we could give you the permission to ask it. But while we're waiting, there was a couple here. So Devine has asked, what's the most common accessibility issue with PDFs?
Most common accessibility issue. Well, the most common issue is that they're not tagged at all and they don't have structure. So, for example, some organisations have asked us to do checks of all of their public-facing documents, and so we'll analyse, say, a couple of hundred of those. What I see is that typically about 20% of them are actually accessible. So this is across all different types of organisations, but it has included some educational ones as well. And I think that problem there is those older files. So it's like, if you can adopt best practice going forward, you can have done that for a few years, but the problem is all those ones you've had in the past, and it's difficult to get rid of those, and it's also time consuming to convert them. So what's the PDF accessibility API? Well, it doesn't do a perfect accessible PDF, but it does it about 91%. So it takes out a huge amount of the work from doing that.
That's great, thank you. Dominic has also asked a question. Dominic, we've just given you presenter permission, so you can unmute yourself.
Thank you. Yes. Hi, Alister. I have a question. I mean, so there's like no end of questions because there's PDF accessibility is a big problem, and
Sure.
It's generally not good news, particularly once you're stuck with an untagged PDF and you don't have access to the source. And then, other than spending enormous amounts of money on the license, there are no free tagging tools that can allow this fix. But you mentioned and I'm just going to say that as an observation. You won't have an answer to that. But the thing that you mentioned in your presentation is that the liquid mode rather,
yeah,
which I love, provides tagging. But there is no way. But is there a way that actually somebody with an accessibility need can access to that tagged version? Because I can only access it on the mobile apps. I cannot see any way. You mentioned the web, but I don't know, how do you get on the web?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So you're right, the reflow, the liquid mode is currently only for the mobile apps. So it's for the Adobe Reader app for Android and iOS, basically. Now, there is, and it doesn't resave it out of there. So yeah, it's just something that it's doing on the fly. If there is also Acrobat for the web, which is a I don't mean like the plugin for viewing PDF files, but the Acrobat tools which you can access online as well. And that currently doesn't have liquid mode. I actually discussed this with some of my engineering colleagues, and liquid mode is an extremely complex thing, actually. So they're working on getting that available for Acrobat on the web as well. In terms of getting hold of those files, I mean, the best thing I think is to have Acrobat. And there are other tools. I mean, I'm not saying that there aren't other tools that do it, but I know Acrobat best, and certainly you can do all that in Acrobat and you can save it out as well from there. And you might be surprised about getting access to that, because a lot of institutions, virtually all of them, do actually have some kind of agreement where they can get Acrobat via, you know, Acrobat's part of Creative Cloud, right? So if your institution has Creative Cloud licenses, then they also have Acrobat, which you can get to.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks, Alister. That was a really good presentation, and we're so pleased that you are kind of able to make time to be here today. Yeah, really appreciate that, because I know how busy you are. But yeah, thank you so much.
I'll try and answer some of those questions in the
chat.
Thank
you so much. You beat me to it. Thank you.
I might have to take some of them offline.
Yeah, that's fine.